Transformers landed in my house one morning, and they started a huge battle. Autobots versus Decepticons. Transformers are huge. My yard is tiny. They caused a big mess. It was a scary way to start the day. I have this bad habit of taking off all my clothes in public places and then just nonchalantly going about my business. It doesn't bother me until I notice other people's reactions, and then I get really embarrassed and put my clothes back on. My mom one time rented the third floor of our house to this guy and his girlfriend, and that was okay until I discovered his secret. In our basement, we had one of those chest freezers, and that's where he kept the bodies of his victims. He was a serial killer. And when I discovered his secret, he made me cut off the hands and feet of his frozen victims with hedge clippers. I managed to get away from him. I was running down the street, and he and his girlfriend were chasing after me. Luckily, the cops got them before they got me. Do you guys remember when you could buy low dosage acid over the counter? You know, LSD? Remember that? Yeah? Some of you? It came in a tube, and it was a topical solution. You rubbed it on your eyelids. I never, ever wanted to try acid before. It scared me. But I don't know what got into me. I was at a party. I guess I had a couple of beers. My boss was there. He was doing it. I figured it'd be safe. So I put some on my eyelids. And then before it kicked in, I started freaking out. I frantically tried to rub it off my eyelids, but it was too late. When I was little, we would play like little gummy bears, run around in the yard. And this one day, it was a beautiful spring day, probably the first nice day of the year. The grass was growing, the flowers were blooming, the giant tiger butterflies, or the swallowtail kind, were flying around. And we were chasing each other like the little gummy bear kids do, trying to catch the butterflies. And I managed to catch one. And I'm standing there holding it like this. And I was so excited. And I was struggling because it was so strong. I'm trying to keep hold on it. And I'm turning around to say, hey, you guys, I caught this tiger butterfly. And it roared. I was very young, and we were crossing the bridge into Cincinnati. And it kept getting more and more narrow. And we kept driving along. And as we drove along, it kept getting more and more narrow. And eventually it got so narrow that the car was wedged between the two sides of the bridge. So we had to get out and climb over the bridge. Over the car, sorry. We climbed over the car and kept walking down, and it just kept getting more and more narrow. Eventually it was a tightrope. I was supposed to teach disco dancing to second and third graders, but I had other ideas. Instead, I took them on this really kick-ass roller coaster. It was one of those roller coasters where you end up upside down, and the only part that held us on was the lap bar. Nothing else in the car was touching us, just that lap bar. It made it really scary, but that's what made it really kick-ass. 5 + 5 = dust. So a few weeks later, I was at this cocktail party. It was one of those fancy art cocktail parties with all the hoity-toity art people in Cincinnati. And for some reason, I thought it'd be a good idea to tell my LSD story. It wasn't. I was very young, and we were crossing the bridge into Cincinnati. And about halfway over, it just stopped. Right in the middle, nothing. So we got out of the car and we looked over the edge, and down below us in the river was a ferry boat waiting for us to jump into it so it could take us the rest of the way to Cincinnati. I went to this outdoor music festivals, one of those hippie music festivals. Lots of people were there. It was a beautiful day. One of those all-day things. All ages, old people, babies. We were having a lot of fun. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. Great music. Everybody was having a lot of fun until the lions came. Everybody scattered. And I ran. I found a good hiding place behind this hill with some other people. And we were okay. Until the lions started coming towards us. And I have to admit, I'm not proud of this. This was not a shining moment for me. But the lions were coming towards us. I panicked. I grabbed a couple of kids that were next to me and I shoved them in front of the lions and ran. I had this birthday celebration that included family, friends, chickens, goats, Pee Wee Herman motorcycles, Americana amusement park, and the museum center, and it was awesome. Late one night, this old man knocked at our door. His old Model T had broken down in front of our house. And he asked my parents if he and his daughter could spend the night at our house. Of course they said yes. At the time, I shared a bedroom with two of my sisters. We had 2 bunk beds. And I was really little, and I was sleeping in the bottom bunk. And the bunk above me was empty because that sister had recently moved out. So that's where the daughter slept. But what he didn't tell us was that his daughter was dead. And I didn't sleep that night. I was very young and we were crossing the bridge into Cincinnati. Midway through, it turned into a roller coaster. And I don't know how this happened, but on the 4th floor of my house, 4 full-grown deer had taken up residence. And I guess they had been there for a while because it looked very cozy. They were very comfortable. So I got a couple of friends to help me get rid of them. And they got 2 of them out, and I was taking the 3rd one out, but it latched onto my arm with its teeth and it wouldn't let go. And for all I know, that 4th one is still out there. There was this, well, no, it was twice, 2 times. This happened twice to me. 2 acquaintances, they weren't even friends, they were acquaintances. They very casually reached across the table and ran their finger through the frosting of my cake. And then just as casually, I started eating it off of their finger while they continued our conversation. I was flabbergasted the first time. The second time I was pissed. You'll get it. I recently met Pete Rose. He was looking very fit and trim. He was wearing his old Reds uniform. And it was really cool to meet him. And I went over to introduce myself to him and say, "Hi, Pete, I'm Annie." And he just waves me off. And I don't know if you guys know this about Pete, but he's kind of a curmudgeon. And he refuses to call people by their real names. He insists on giving them new names. So I say, "Hey, Pete, I'm Annie." And he's like, "No, you're the one that doesn't listen with freckles." And that's all he calls me from now on.